Mafia: The Old Country is the fourth main entry in the Mafia series, and it is fascinating in a variety of ways. Some for good, some for ill, all intriguing.
What? Please, I can't. There is no cat. Not down here.
Many of the roads taken have been clearly mapped out quite deliberately to deal with the elephant in the room: length. The Old Country is the latest in a growing category of truncated AAA releases. That is to say, a game with big budget ambitions and values, but not dead set on monopolising your time for 40 plus hours, or forever through some live service component. The Old Country gets in, tells its story, and confidently extracts itself from your brain in well under 15 hours. And on the whole, it feels better for it.
What is wrong with you?
Mafia 3, the last main entry in the series, had a sprawling open world and a labyrinthine story of betrayal and revenge in an escalating cycle. The Old Country, however, is stripped back and simplified. It wants to merely do a handful of things well enough in order to deliver a story that'll keep you gripped, which honestly isn't a bad thing. Some of that streamlining is obvious. The slice of Sicily where events take place nods to an open world, but stops short of truly being one. You can drive around here and there at the start of chapters, but there's no police patrols, no laundry list of side activities, and no wires to tap. Instead, it's just pretty and characterful, something that serves as a lovely backdrop to bloody affairs. The world is vaguely filmic in notion, both in terms of how a pretty, perfectly framed shot is always around the next bend, and also in how its carefully curated and perfectionist visuals give a vague sense of fakery. The best open worlds strive to feel like living places. The Old Country doesn't go for that at all, and ends up instead feeling more like the best-looking Hollywood backlot in history. Here's another great streamlining example: combat. People in the titular Old Country fight two ways, with blades and bullets, although you can also use stealth and choke people out. This is a game about the mafiosi, famed for roughing folk up, where it's impossible to throw a punch. This might seem strange or like a cop-out, but in context it simply feels like just another part of the puzzle, another choice made to keep things simple. The story being told here, and its early 1900s setting, is best served by perfidious sneakery, blazing gun battles, or honourable and cinematically charged one-on-one knife duels. So that's what the game gives you.
Don't waste your breath. You're going to need it.
In truth, it's the story that carries the whole affair. The performances are excellent, the characters evocative, and the path that gets charted through what begins as a relatively paint-by-numbers Cosa Nostra narrative is genuinely interesting and affecting. But especially at the start of the game, the narrative definitely plays the hits, so to speak. So when protagonist Enzo is plucked out of a miserable life into the bosom of a thriving and honourable mafia family, you'd be forgiven for tuning out. The early blossoming of a convincing love story told in snatched moments and through subtler facial expressions should keep you engaged, however, as will the beautiful surroundings and strong performances. Driving around is, in many cases, optional, a skip journey button popping up liberally, but you won't want to do that when it's so much fun to barrel down dirt roads and tiny hamlets, taking in this digital Sicily's scenic rolling beauty. There's Mediterranean blue skies, popping colourful flora, and a looming volcano in the distance. There's solid voice work to the characters too, which combines with strong animation, the furrow of the brow, a cruel quirk at the corner of a mouth. Credit also has to be given to Riccardo Frescari, who sells Enzo as a troubled man who grows and changes, rather than a simple and static protagonist. Sticking around for the fairly bland narrative at the beginning really begins to pay off later on, and it goes places that aren't as commonly trodden ground for these tales. The concept of life in the family as a prison, as well as a route to an elegant life, surges to the fore, and Enzo becomes genuinely complex. This is by no means a wholly original story. The ground trodden is familiar to many famed pieces of mob entertainment, but it's framed in an interesting enough way here, especially by the standards of gaming, to properly enthrall. It's true that this narrative rubs up against the realities of a game like this, mind. Design-wise, at a push, the Old Country can be described as relatively rote. It is tradition personified. First comes cinematic storytelling, hefting around bottles of wine or socialising with people at base, then a scenic drive somewhere as your allies chatter away in the car. Once at the destination, you'll either successfully sneak inside or get rumbled and start blasting. Even if stealth was successful, at the halfway point of a mission, you'll still get spotted in a cutscene and then have to fight your way out via a labyrinth of handily placed chest-high walls, something that is a not insignificant portion of the game's chapters. Quite often, everything is closed out by one of those aforementioned cinematic one-on-one knife fights too. All of that is generally fine and well and good, but there are things that frustrate. The stealth is genuinely baffling. Enemies oscillate between being painfully thick and suddenly omniscient. Sometimes signposting is awfully obtuse too. You will regularly die to a grenade that was close enough to hurt you, but far enough away that it didn't trigger the grenade proximity warning icon. There's a lot of little things like that. But then you notice little touches that do work, like how heavier weapons hit with a hyper-satisfying force, slamming enemies like a brick through a plate glass window, or how the in-universe road signs adjust so that they're always pointing towards your next objective, which would admittedly feel cleverer if there wasn't always a giant yellow icon marking your objective anyway. Driving in general is a surprising joy. Drifty, rickety old-world cars that are bolstered by a surprising in-depth simulation driving mode, if that sort of thing is your bag. So there is rough and there is smooth, and you'll have to learn to deal with them both. You can expect to rub against that strange feeling of the narrative asking you to consider how Enzo is conflicted about killing one unarmed man after the game had him mowing through 30 dudes without remorse to get there, for example. Many games are guilty of this, but the narrative of this Mafia tackles some fairly prickly subject matters and shoots for a solemnity that makes the dissonance far more prominent. This is the whole thing about Mafia: The Old Country. The gameplay is relatively unremarkable, and in many ways it feels like elements of its design fell out of a time portal from a bygone era. It feels like some of the offbeat action-adventure games of the 360 and PS3 eras, at least in terms of design, and you can sense that in the structure of the missions and gameplay loop, as outlined above. But then the production value and narrative flair is very much of today. It's a game of two halves, and those two halves are vaguely mismatched. Except, at the same time, they kind of aren't. If you're willing to accept that the relatively unremarkable gameplay offering is simply a vehicle for some lovely storytelling, you're going to have a good time here. Mafia: The Old Country certainly doesn't waste your time, and the simplicity of its gameplay systems and even its set-like world design end up serving a purpose in the end. The fluff is cut right back, and you get exactly what Hangar 13 needed to tell this story. Nothing more, nothing less. Sometimes a slighter experience is more desirable than a bloated one, and while Mafia: The Old Country comes with enough caveats to load up the back of a bootlegger's truck, if you go in understanding what you're getting, you're likely to have a great time. Thank you so much for watching this review of Mafia: The Old Country. If you enjoyed it, please do give it a like, and why not subscribe to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games. Goodbye.
I don't know how you did it. This could have gone very differently.
Now is a great time to score some incredible games through humble choice. Live now through to September the 2nd, you can grab Persona 5 Royale, Vanisher's Ghost of New Eden, My Time at Sandrock, and more. Whether you're building your backlog or discovering something new, this is the perfect time to pick up these fan favourites. Plus, every purchase supports a good cause, with this month's featured charity being Donors Choose. Get a curated mix of PC games every month, all for just £11.49 a month.